You're listening to the Growth Stories podcast, the show where we interview business owners, entrepreneurs, and industry leaders to hear their stories about how they've built and scaled their businesses to amazing heights. I'm Ben Landers, I'm your host, and in today's episode, I'm speaking with Jonathan Caldwell, the CEO of Black Tie Moving. Now, Jonathan, or JC as he's known around Blue Corona, didn't set out to become the CEO of a moving company. He was working as a public servant in law enforcement in Dallas, Texas, when he got a call from a good friend, Dustin Black. And Dustin had an out-of-the-blue pitch for JC. He said, come join me at my fast-growth, high-end moving company. Now, JC had no experience in the moving industry, but I think as you listen, you'll realize that whatever JC might have lacked in terms of industry experience, he more than makes up with his talent for building, leading, managing, retaining a team, a world-class team. Black Tie has grown rapidly. They've been on the Inc. 5000 list 5, I think, consecutive times. And as JC and I go back through his journey, I think you'll hear how his upbringing, how his previous career, how those influenced his work ethic, his leadership style, his managerial approach. JC will talk about some of the ways that they think about the business, how they've had to evolve as they've grown, and some business philosophies that they've used and continue to use. So this is an episode that you won't want to miss. Sit back, listen, learn, and enjoy. JC, welcome to Growth Stories. How are you?
And thank you so much. Doing great. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, fantastic. Why don't you give us an intro yourself and the business?
Absolutely. So my name is Jonathan Caldwell, formerly from Texas and coming to you today from Nashville, Tennessee. Moved out to Nashville just a couple of years ago, and we'll get into that more, I'm sure, in a minute about the business and some of our locations. But most of my life has been as a public servant. I was a police officer for many years, almost 20 years. Did a lot of that time in Dallas, Texas, and was on patrol for many years and then undercover and ultimately on a tactical unit there. And good friend of mine, which is also the start of the business, good friend of mine, Dustin Black, who is our primary owner and founder of Black Tie. He and I were friends for years. And Dustin called me one day and said, man, I started a moving company. And I was like, what? He's very successful in mortgage and business, great entrepreneur. And I just don't think I was expecting I started a moving company call from him. And Dustin called me and he's like, man, we're just having such rapid, super exciting growth. And he's like, I really need a right hand. He said, I'm moving. He was headed out to California at that point for some opportunities in the business. And he said, what's the chance of you taking this role, just coming in here, managing and helping? And I said, absolutely not. I hate moving. Nobody likes to move, right? I said, no way. And, it's funny, but Dustin waited a few months, called me back and just said, man, this is going to be a real opportunity and something I want you to strongly consider. I took early retirement from Dallas Police Department and came over in around 2015. And as they say, really, the rest is history. We had one location back then in Dallas, which is still our, not our corporate location now, but it's our flagship still. It's our largest location. And came over and there was one location in Dallas and just getting off the ground in Memphis. And that was about 14 locations ago.
Wow.
And so we've been blessed with crazy growth. At that point, when Dustin called me, it was literally Dustin as the owner and founder, a sales guy and a half, and then the movers. And that was Black Tie at that point.
Now, did you if you rewind, go back in time, I mean, would you have had any guess that you would be doing what you're doing now, given your original career track?
Absolutely not. I had every intention of retiring in Dallas from the Dallas Police Department. Unlike some guys in law enforcement in that field, I loved it. And I still do have a great love and respect for the guys. I literally talk to the men from my unit and my sergeant still probably communicate weekly. They've been out here to visit, and every time I'm back in Dallas, I always make it a point to get by the office and the station and see the guys. And so, as a company, now we're a huge supporter of our military and law enforcement. And so that has just been it's part of my DNA. It's just who I am. And so never would have guessed this field. I love to lead. And that's really why Dustin said that, because I told him, I was like, man, we've been friends for years. You know me, you know what I do. I said, I'm not a 9-to-5 corporate guy, and I'm certainly not a mover. I don't know this business.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I know you know how to lead men.
Yeah.
And I know that I can trust you. And those things meant a lot to me. Number one, that he valued my friendship in that way. But it also meant a lot to me from the standpoint that you don't necessarily have to be a fully vetted out, years of experience in an industry. If you have the right attitude of leadership, and you can settle in and learn to listen to your people, learn to manage people how you would want to be managed, and learn that every person can't be managed the same, and be a leader, lead from the front. Those are all things that my former career taught me, and that I have brought many of those same areas of how we do things here at Black Tie into this position. And so that's really been my mindset. But no, to answer your short question, I would have never guessed I'd be in the moving industry.
You've mentioned so many things that are interesting to me. I have a 14-year-old son and a 12-year-old daughter, and when our son was probably, I don't know, 12, he had been on a bunch of basketball teams, and I would say some of the basketball coaches you could tell they were basketball guys, right? They were they knew all the plays and the positions, but these are little kids, and this isn't some select, elite league. This is like through his school. And so I went to a couple of the practices, with the hardcore basketball player doing the coaching. And I could tell, my son's sort of on the fence, like I could take it or leave it. And then the next year he had a guy who's a Marine, lives in I guess he's now he works for the Department of Defense, but he was in the Marines. He's a reservist now, and he became the coach. And I go to watch the practice. Now I did only catch the tail end of it, but he's got the kids doing this drill that there's no ball. It just requires coordination and sort of intra-team competition, but also like they're competing as a united team.
Right.
And, that led to me talking to this guy's name's Randy Stone. And I'm talking to Randy on the side just about life and what he does for a living and all this stuff. And at one point this was years ago, I tried to get him to come and be my right-hand guy at Blue Corona. This is before I recruited Mike into his role as president.
Okay.
And Randy said to me, like, I'm an attorney by trade, a Marine, and I work for the Department of Defense. I don't know anything about digital marketing. And I said, I don't care. I literally don't care. All I'm looking for is the leadership element and the coaching. That's it. And I don't care whether they're 12-year-olds, 25-year-old, Marines, or digital marketers. I really don't care.
Right.
And so it's interesting that's what Dustin, saw in you, and that's sort of your core, sort of the core thing that led to him, recruiting you. I guess you also said something though that I thought was really interesting. You said, understanding that you can't manage people all in the same way. And I feel like as we've watched a lot of young, sort of people that we promoted into management, probably because they were really good at what they were doing, not because they had, the management skills or something. And I think a lot of them then try to apply this template, like they read a book about management, and it's like, this is how to manage people. So I guess talk about
take this test, take this test.
Yeah. How did you sort of reach that realization that, different people are wired different ways, and if you treat them all the same, you don't,
it's a great question. And I'm going to go back and say great training at Dallas PD, but I'm going to say nothing trumps life experience. And I come from a family of 5. My dad and mom always told us, they're like, we literally, someday when you have kids, you'll understand, but we couldn't discipline reward, love each of you the same. You were all five very different. In my family, we're extremely close. But they're like, even in the family setting, you're all very different individuals and different
Mm.
people, and we had to treat you differently.
Mm.
And then I think that got really kind of shored up when I got to the police department. And you would think more from the training side, but it wasn't. It was out in the most, I won't say basic, but the most basis part of what police officers do. And that's just being in a patrol car in uniform, answering call after call. Right. And I moved on to special units for many years, but I can remember that point really was taught to me in that patrol car
Mm.
and showing up to a call,
Mm.
and every person literally was different.
Mm.
Right, every person different, and how I needed to talk to them. Did I need to be a counselor? Did I need to be a coach?
Mm.
Did I need to be a disciplinarian at that point, or was it time to take the gloves off? And there's a time, unfortunately, there is a time for all of those.
Yeah.
On any given call, and that may change in seconds, or
Mm.
it might progress over a long conversation and a long investigation.
Mm.
But I firmly believe that is where that became the most real to me.
Mm.
And just seeing that people, because of backgrounds, education, life experience, maybe the police officer that showed up to their call a week ago left a completely bad taste in their mouth,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or I could show up and I could see that they had been talked to and their situation had been handled properly before.
Mm.
And I had to be ready to flex to that.
Mm.
And it is absolutely the same with the men and women that work here at Black Tie, that I want to understand. It is part of what drives me to know my people
Mm.
on a personal level, and know where they come from, know who they are, know their families, understand kind of their history personally. And it
Mhm.
gives me a much better position to manage from if
Mhm.
I understand their dynamics. So, yeah, not something I learned in college, but definitely something I learned in the real world for sure.
Yeah, I think about any management courses that I took and sort of just the the gap between, again, what you learn in a class or in a college project where, again, by definition, you're all in college and,
Right.
and so you come from somewhat similar backgrounds from an educational standpoint. And then I remember someone gave me the book, It's Your Ship,
Okay.
which is, about, I'm going to butcher his last name, so I almost don't want to say it, but it was a guy who basically became the commander of like the worst performing ship in the Navy. Abramoff, I think was his last name, but I probably butchered that. But one of the things that he talks about is just getting to know, the people on the ship, the men on the ship, and how, you'd get people from these wildly different backgrounds. And again, to treat them or try to motivate them the same. I think if there's a commonality, from that book, it's getting to know people at a personal level and trying to figure out what do they want? What are their goals? What are their dreams? What are they trying to achieve? And then
Sure.
sort of give them, kind of frame whatever you're trying to get done within the context of this is how it can help you, you know, achieve your
Yes.
success, and kind of giving them ownership of the job. And so they start to take pride in, take pride in the work, take pride in the ship, and we always use that at the company level, sort of the proverbial ship. I guess you guys have grown, like this. I saw you guys were on the Inc. 500, 5,000 a whole bunch of times. We've been on that list too. Talk about, in your mind, have you had to evolve any aspect of either, could be the leadership style, it could be sort of management or the structure of the business, sort of as you've grown, or I don't know, what's your perspective on that change as you've grown bigger?
Absolutely. So Dustin used to use a term, still does, as we look at new ventures and things, but Dustin would always say, crawl, walk, run.
Hmm.
Right. And I think that a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of business owners follow that same mentality. And really, I mean, it's not something I have to dissect greatly, but we get it, right? Start out slow, add what you can, and learn to run, and nail it and then scale it. I don't want to be a talking head of cliche phrases here for you, but that is something that we feel strongly about. But we have absolutely had to evolve with the times, even in the short life, because we look at Black Tie as a very young company.
Hmm.
Right? We're not even 10 years old yet, right? So
Incredible.
in the world of business, we're very young, and we still have had massive changes in how we have to attract new hires more than ever in the last couple years. I'm sure we'll talk about that more in a minute, but we've definitely evolved with our culture, with our software,
Hmm.
with companies like yours coming alongside us and realizing that the world has changed. This is not people picking up the Sunday newspaper and choosing their moving company,
Hmm.
right? It's not something we can throw a classified ad out for and get business.
Hmm.
We have to be digitized and move with the world and at the pace that it's moving, which is a challenge at times. People go, well, the moving industry, right? You pick up heavy stuff and you carry it over here and you set heavy stuff down and you try to have minimal damages.
Hmm.
That's really the moving company in a nutshell. I guess to some extent that is the basis of what we
Hmm.
do, but there is so much deeper there. Moving is listed as one of the top 10 most stressful things that a person will do in their lifetime.
Hmm.
And it is in the top 5 with divorce, loss of a loved one, loss of employment,
Hmm.
change of employment. And so we have built into the minds of our moving consultants in our sales team just to understand that everyone, and this is something key, I think, that a lot of moving companies miss. Every person that's calling us for a move in is not having an exciting day. Okay. A lot of times we go, wow, somebody bought a new house. They got their forever home. They moved, they upgraded their apartment. Well, that's a percentage of people, but there's also a percentage of people that are packing up memories of a lifetime of marriage and it's now over,
Hmm.
right? There's people that are moving their last child out of the home and now they're an empty nest couple.
Hmm.
There's a widow that has been in a marriage for 25, 30, 40 years and is now having to downsize to an apartment because she can't handle this any longer. And not to take the call here to a sad tone, but I think it's important that we understand our customers
Yeah.
and understand who they are and what's going on in their life, and just that we flex and adjust on those calls. And when our guys arrive, many times
Hmm.
we've told our men as they're arriving on a job what the backstory is,
Hmm.
to let them know, we want to take care of every one of our customers, but today this customer could use a lot less stress
Hmm.
and a lot more care. And so we try to do that as best we can and really flex and move with the culture of what's going on
Hmm.
around us.
It's interesting that you said that. I would have never thought about that. I guess by default, I would have thought of moving, sort of through the lens of my own personal experience, which was, the family growing and
Me as
and
well.
moving on up type of thing. But
Yes,
to
sir.
your point, that would be I would be sort of really out of sync to not, to not be aware of all of the other things that could be going on in someone's lives. And so I guess from all the way from the consultants kind of on the sales side to the folks that show up on the day of, it's funny, you mentioned earlier, like sort of not to throw out, the cliches, but I feel like so much of business is getting these things that are ultimately really simple, but getting them right, like 99% of the time. Like you're going for 100%, but it's like just nailing it all the time. And that they're simple things, but it's really hard to get it right consistently. So when you talk about that stuff, I mean, just again, having your crew show up with that mindset, every time, I would imagine that's a huge competitive differentiator, even though it sounds like a simple thing once you hear it.
Right. It really is. And it is, pardon me, it is the simple things, I believe. And there's so many people not getting the simple things right
Mm.
that when you do get the simple things right, you do stand out.
Yeah.
And Black Tie was born, and I kind of just glazed over that in the beginning of the session here, but Black Tie was born out of a need in the industry.
Mm.
Dustin had a personal move in Dallas, Texas, before he was involved in the moving industry at all. His dad had been in years prior, but Dustin personally being involved, he had a personal move and had tens of thousands of dollars of damage
Mm.
done to fine art, high-end furnishings. Dustin was very well off at that from other, ventures previously as an entrepreneur, and so had a very delicate move, and it was extremely careless.
Mm.
And the service after the fact was just really a good luck with that
Mm.
kind of phone call. And as entrepreneurs do, and I do not consider myself an entrepreneur. I'm a good second guy, and I come in and I will run something and run it properly. But that true entrepreneur mind, I feel like they're always looking. I have lots of friends that are entrepreneurs and very successful, and I just see them constantly looking for a need in an industry or in a product or whatever. And Dustin looked at that and he just said, there has got to be a better way to do this. And the better way is by the people we hire and getting the basic things right? Wrapping that furniture properly, stacking it properly. And that can apply to literally any business. It's like you just said, with your industry or name 100 other industries. It really is just about nailing those simple things and letting the customer relax and have a great experience in what's happening. And that is really our goal, that we don't add to the stress on moving day. If we show up and we're unprepared and we're not doing things properly, or the guys are rude to a customer or those kind of things, that's just not who we are. It's not our culture. We're there to lower this level of stress, not to add to it, because it's already there in the moving. Regardless, even if it's a good situation, moving is still not easy. I've been fortunate to in my adult life to get to move and it be exciting, right? To move to a new property, or I've got a little hobby farm now out here south of Nashville, and so that was so exciting to get to move. But it didn't take away the stress of the move. Even being an owner of a moving company, and I think of it like that too. I go, I have every resource. I can pick whatever guys I want. I know what the trucks are. I've got all the boxes I need, all the packing material, and this is still a rough day. This is a rough process. And that's how I try to communicate that to my team, my executive team, and just go, man, even on my personal move, and it went flawless, it was so stressful. And so,
I think, you also probably almost all of our clients are home services in some form or fashion. And, on the one hand, you would think that's a pro. Like when something goes wrong with my HVAC system or I need new floors, I have a cadre of people that I can call that I know. And, I sort of know, how different people position their businesses, high end or, mid, moderate or whatever. But I think the issue that I've always had is you start to develop this attention to detail as a business owner or as someone running a company. And once you develop it, you can't undevelop it. And so the challenge that I have, and I'm sure you have it, when they're coming to do your move, it's like you've got this mental checklist of 1,000 things. Whereas as a consumer, I don't understand, it just magically gets in the truck and appears, in the new location. I don't have that, like all the little things. And so I'm sure that part is probably tough. And the fact that your folks, did such a great job, again, I'm sure it's like when you're doing it for the boss, it's got to be on your A game, but
they did a great job for sure. But, it is frustrating, when we go to other businesses and certainly won't name any businesses, but let's just say a retail storefront style business. And nothing is more frustrating to me. And I let this again fuel our training and our knowledge level for all of our staff, from sales to guys on the trucks, to our crew leaders, to our operations managers. Nothing more frustrating to me when I go in a store that I don't have great knowledge of the product that I need. And I ask a person, multiple people, and they have no more knowledge than I have about that product. That is ultimately frustrating.
Yeah.
To be somewhere, I'm expecting at least the person to have a working knowledge of what's going on. So we say it all the time, and we don't say it in a bragging way or in a looking down on our client way, but we say we are the expert,
Hmm.
right? We're the expert in the moving. We tell our sales consultants, look, don't ask the customer when they want to move.
Hmm.
Don't ask them what size truck they want,
Hmm.
right? Don't ask them, do they want to protect this television or not? They don't know. Like you said, that's a great analogy. That magically it was in this house, and somehow it got in this truck and back out of the truck and back in my house, and it's not broken.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of moving pieces and parts that made that happen. And so I just want our people to come across humbly and as approachable and over communicating,
Yeah.
but as a professional and a professional in their craft as
I think
well.
so many people, at least I feel this way. I know there's a, I don't know. I felt like before I owned a business, I sort of thought that, business owners probably skew alpha, like I'm driving the ship type of thing. But, I don't know, the longer I've run our business, the more I look for people to make recommendations as the expert, to tell me, if it were your move, how would you recommend I do this? Because I don't know the first thing about fill in the blank moving or the
Right.
floors, whatever. So, it's like, hey, if this were my television, I would want the protective wrap. It's up to
Yep.
you, but that's my recommendation, et cetera, for a TV this size or whatever.
Absolutely.
It's just so much easier than, when that's all assumed, and then something goes wrong, and it's like, well, they didn't ask me for that. And it's like, dude, I don't know what I'm doing. That's why I called you guys.
I call it a professional mover.
Yeah.
So they would have those answers, right?
Yeah.
And I like to surround myself, because certainly I cannot be an expert in every area of this business. Now, as CEOs and owners, we would like to say that we're an expert at every level of our business. And maybe if we were speaking on stage somewhere and coaching, maybe we might edge that a little further. I hear guys do it all the time. But I think it generates value in my people. All right. My movers love it. Now, I've been on these trucks before, right? When we're in a busy summer, and this wasn't, 2 summers ago, I can remember the most recent time of my operations manager calling me and saying, hey, one of the guys just got hurt on the truck. I literally have no one else to call, and I'm going to drive the truck. Do you know anyone that you could send? And I grabbed my shorts and a black tie t-shirt, and I met him at the job. Now, was I the best helper he could have had that day?
You were like undercover boss that day. Have
I
you ever
was
watched that show?
undercover boss for sure.
That's
I didn't
nice.
tell the customers who I was. I just introduced myself by name, and I worked as hard as I could and as good as I could. But I'm not a professional mover,
Yeah.
right? And so I go to our guys at times, a helper, right, that I see has a very good ability in stacking a truck and padding and wrapping, and he really takes pride in it, right? When I have a question about, are we doing something right in that way, or I've seen a damage that's come through or something, the movers love it when I ask them that question. When they see that I value their opinion as well, and that speaks to culture and who I am as a leader. And I don't have the corner on that market. I'm sure there's many other people that lead that way and do it just as well, or in different ways. But to me, I'm very much a team leader. And I know there are times when I have to take the L on something and assume full responsibility, and that is what it is. And I'm always prepared and ready to do that. But at the same time, I like to get input from my team. From the bottom to the top, I have an incredible executive team. And I literally just got off a Zoom call. That's why I was a minute or two late, actually. We meet every Monday at 10 a.m. And we talk. Our CFO, my president of sales, my president of operations, one of my most tenured guys in the industry, even before Black Tie, Chris Hess out of Ohio. Chris is a regional director and manager for a whole state. And Chris has 24 years in the business. And so here I am, Chris's boss, right? And you'll never that's a term you just don't hear me use
Right.
ever.
Right.
And why I put it in silly air quotes here today, because again, that's not my style.
Yeah.
I call Chris every week to ask for his help and his opinion,
Hmm.
right? Because the guy's been in the industry 23 years. If it's been done, he's probably seen it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a message that I would send to leaders. Sometimes we surround ourselves, and we should, with other successful CEOs and owners and in those mixes. But it can also be a very I want to say this the right way, but it can be a very toxic thing sometimes to go that, oh, man, we're all really good,
Mm-hmm.
right? Look at the success of our businesses, and we forget about the mountain of people
Mm-hmm.
that have helped us to succeed. And every day, that is just my goal, that the men that and women that work with me on a daily basis, from the trucks to these executive offices, understand and know that we're doing this thing together.
Yeah.
And I'll make the hard calls when I have to, but I want their opinions as we move forward.
I mean, that's got to be a key, a key takeaway for those who are listening, who are running smaller companies. Again, a lot of people start a company because they're an expert in something, some industry or at doing something they're really good at it. Some people are really bright and kind of good at everything that they do. And to a point, I think that can be, helpful, the one man or one woman wrecking crew, where, they can do everything from accounting, HR, doing the install, et cetera, et cetera. But it also, you get sort of to this ceiling. And I think again, it goes back to why you were, recruited to come in, is that leadership ability. The fact that you're not, again, the mile deep expert in every single part means you have to rely on the team and build the team, which ultimately will allow the business to become much bigger than if everything has to funnel up to, Mr. or Mrs., genius, great at everything. So yeah,
I
that's
had
fantastic.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I had a super defining moment in that for me, because I grew up working hard. My family are just workers, right? My dad, we weren't a stay in bed till noon on Saturday. He would, and don't ever dare say to my dad, you're bored, right? Because he will definitely find a task, But I remember I had recently come to Black Tie. Dustin was in California. He called, and and I expect this from my team. I told everyone before I got on this, I'm like, you won't be able to reach me for an hour, right?
Yeah.
And I said that, but I am a high communicator, right?
Yeah.
Text calls, I'm gonna, if you don't get one, you're gonna get it back very quick if I don't answer on the first ring. And Dustin called, and I didn't answer. And he called a couple more times. I didn't answer. I think he was just so used to it, and it wasn't important. I don't even remember what the conversation was now. It's been many years ago. But I called him back and I said, hey, man, I'm sorry. I was like shoulder deep in this truck out here, right? Covered in grease. And I said, I just, I couldn't answer the phone. I was covered in oil, whatever. And he was not at all upset I didn't answer. He's like, no big deal, man. But he's like, why are you covered in grease? Is my question, right? What are you doing? And I was like, well, this oil filter was falling off this truck. And, I saw it, grabbed my tools out of the truck, and I went out there and I got it back up and running and squared away. I thought that was going to be a big, hey, good job, JC. And he taught me a valuable business lesson. He's like, I understand you're a worker. And when the time comes that you will do what has to be done. But he said, did we not have a mechanic? Was the shop closed today? They couldn't find anyone else to do it. He said, you just made us pay the most high paid oil change mechanic on the planet. And so, it was a real eye opener to me, because what I am comfortable with and what I am good at is hands-on. I'm a worker, right? My whole life. And so as I transported myself here out of the COO position back in March of 2020, when Dustin came and said, hey, obviously I'm still here as the founder and as an owner, but he said, I don't want to be involved in the day-to-day any longer. And he said, you've been ready for this for a long time. and I want you to move into the role of CEO.
Mm.
Well, that has been a challenge for me over the past year, not because I didn't feel like I was ready for that job and to do the work, but because I have to be very careful every day not to step on the toes of my VP of operations, because I want to get right back out of this chair, right? Because it's the least comfortable place for me at a desk. And I want to go back outside. I want to go look at the trucks. I want to be the one to go buy the trucks. I want to be the one to interview every guy that comes in. And so it's been a valuable lesson for me. And for leaders, it was a guilt thing for me, Ben. Like, I felt like, man, I can't just oversee, which the position requires a lot of. And I felt like I was being lazy almost. So as businesses scale, no matter what someone's, we're a lot of us in the home service that you guys are connected to. I would challenge leaders and owners, CEOs, VPs. I would challenge them to relax a little bit and do the big things, right? Really keep an eye on what's going on, because sometimes work on your business. Here's another one of my phrases for you. Work on your business instead of working in your business, because I can get too muddled up down here in what's going on operationally. And I'm letting things go by every day that I should be watching. And I should be watching our numbers, and I should be getting pro formas out for our new locations and things like that. And so that's a big lesson, probably the biggest single lesson I've had to learn.
Well, and that is right on the bullseye. I think for, again, a lot of the folks listening, it's awesome to hear you describing that, because I think that's something that anyone who, if they're a founder of a business and then they grow it, they struggle with it as they transition into the role that you're now in as the CEO, going from being the one who's doing everything. And I think a lot of people get success by being super action oriented, showing that there's no job below them, like jump in and get it done. And I was exactly the same way, would get in the morning, get in the office at 5, last one to leave. I took pride in that. I'm always here, for the team. When I brought Mike in, I brought Mike Wilson in as our vice president of sales and marketing initially, but Mike was senior to me in terms of his career, the length of his career. He had never started a company, but he had worked for a professional CEO. And, kind of on the side, I sort of pulled Mike aside and said, with Mike moving into the presidential role, which is like a COO, in some ways I was kind of saying to him, like, what do I do, now? And one thing that Mike really helped me with is sort of a way to operationalize that. Like when people say, working on vision or strategy, I pictured myself sitting in my office, like vision, just dreaming off, looking out the window. I'm like, if someone walks in and I'm doing that, they're going to be like, what is this idiot? Why is this guy here? Yeah, he's the owner, but
totally feel that.
Yeah. And so Mike gave me sort of this template that his mentor, a guy who was brought in as a professional CEO, used, where it almost just took it and was like, we want everyone in the organization to know where we're going, our story, what makes us different, our culture, what we're trying to achieve. It was basically like a big PowerPoint deck. And Mike's mentor was sort of the keeper of the deck. And most of his job was sort of just weaving that, sort of where we're going, what makes us different, the culture, reinforcing it, just on a day-to-day, but always through asking questions of, the executive team, as opposed to diving in, it's like coach and praise, and as opposed to like jumping in. If you're doing the work, you might have the wrong person in that seat. And then your job becomes who's the right person for the seat. So it really helped me. And it sort of seems like you've gone through that journey as well. And it's tough. I mean, that's a tough transition to make. If you're a hard worker.
It was hard for me. And it wasn't like patting myself on the back because I was a worker. It just was the jobs I had. Right. And so it was a cultural thing for me that's good in a way. Everybody wants a hard worker. But at the same time, I did have to understand and prioritize the tasks that needed done. And more than ever, because I relied heavily on Dustin. I still do, right? Dustin and I talk every day. It's not like he's unconnected to Black Tie. That's not it at all. But I relied heavily on Dustin to steer the ship, right? right? I made sure it was running. I made sure it had plenty of crew on it. I made sure we were supplied properly. And he could just stand up there at the wheel and know where to take this thing next. And so that, by all means, and not to beat a dead horse here, it was just that definitely was my biggest challenge from March of 2020 going forward. Now, Dustin and I did have a funny conversation on that day in March when he gives me that and tells me that, we're brothers. People say, hey, we're like brothers. Dustin and I are brothers. We've been through it all together, and over time we've built that bond. And I said, I'm not sure. You literally birthed this thing yourself. It's your baby. You've grown this to what it is today. And I said, so I don't know if I should hug you and thank you for your faith in me and allowing me to take this next step in my career and for my family and all these things, or if I should just come over there and choke you out right now for handing me a multi-state business in the middle of a global pandemic that nobody knows where it's going yet. And so we often still laugh about that, but we were God bless us so much even during that time. And we had growth right through 2020. And so there's been challenging times, but we've really had a great team around us and great people that have helped us to make those challenges work. And the most recent, probably biggest challenge was just getting people to work.
I was just going to ask you about that. Is when I feel like for the companies that are sort of blessed enough to continue to grow, then the challenge becomes labor. And so I guess maybe talk about the types of folks that you look for, how you go about recruiting, and then also just developing. I mean, I feel like so much of keeping people, retaining people, sort of investing in them some way, shape, or form. So I guess talk about that.
Yeah, sure. So it used to be not a terrible process, Indeed and Craigslist and just getting the jobs out there, word of mouth, and letting people know. And we could usually keep a pretty solid stream. And I am talking about our labor force now, not our office side, but from the labor force, it wasn't terrible because we were a good job, right? It's the guys could come in, make a lot of money. It was physical, it was outside, it wasn't micromanaged out on the job site. So it was a good setting. If you're a hard worker and wanted to come out and make the money, we don't mess with the guys' tips. So the men on the trucks, we're out here making, $65,000 a year if they were out there working hard and providing a great service. And so it was always kind of automatic. We had a good pool that we could always pull from, and then let this thing hit, right? We saw 2020, not that big a deal. Didn't really see a big decline. And then end of 20 and beginning of 21, we saw a lot of the assistance hit. We saw a lot of the unemployment get bonused above the regular numbers. And when you're looking at $15 and $16, $17 an hour positions, a lot of those positions were able to make that from home, literally not working. And so it took a huge impact on us. I'll use Columbus, great branch, great leadership there. So I say that because I know there were no other factors that were causing this. And we were running 13, 14 trucks a day in Columbus and literally had to scale back to running 3.
Wow.
3. And that was just steady turning business down every day, which is crushing as a business owner and the person responsible for a business and looking at it and going, oh my gosh, I mean, what are we going to do? I'm having conversations with Chris that I was speaking of earlier, in the industry for over 20 years. And Chris is on the phone with me going, just really exasperated and saying, I am trying everything that I know, all the knowledge that I have accumulated over this time. And he said, I am failing and I don't know what to do. And I told him, I was like, man, look, we're going to fail together and we're going to win together. And we just kept pushing. And honestly, I wish I could say that we pulled out some silver bullet and we did this instead of that. And all of a sudden the ranks exploded again and we were full. It just wasn't like that. And if I had that silver bullet, I would probably call you on a separate call and we'd start another business.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. A staffing business.
But it was really just staying the course, I think, is the best way to look at it and go, this too is going to pass.
Yeah.
Right. And we watched the trend, which was very interesting, from the calendar and from our documents and our graphs and charts here for the business. We just watched as Columbus first, for whatever reason. Columbus took the dive first from a labor standpoint, and then it started to come out of it quicker than the other locations. And they have all now, as of probably 2 weeks ago, we have started to see a slow but steady resurgence of people coming back to work. And, now in the meantime, we had to do everything we could. Hey, do you need Saturday off? Great. You can have Saturday off. Doing large merit raises and letting people, because we were having to compete, we go down the street to get lunch at a fast food restaurant and they were paying $18 an hour for, first person through the door, paying them in cash and paying them at the end of the day. And so literally every challenge that could be put into this labor market just kept getting thrown at us. And we're like, look, we're going to pivot as we're good at, but we are not going to just lose our mind here and make all these adjustments that will only perpetuate the problem. I
love your comment about sort of this too shall pass. I think, one of the things that I think I've noticed, in the small business world is and I think it skews the smaller the business, the more this happens, where there's this, it's almost like a bipolar where it's like every little thing that happens to that small business owner is like this nuclear crisis, like, what are we going to do? Oh no, it's this. And people like yourself, and I think people running more mature businesses sort of like have that ability to like slow things down, calm people in that panic, and then just, what can we productively do? What can we control? What can we productively do? The only, I don't think this completely changes anything, but as I would look at I started my career in recruitment, selling recruitment software for hotjobs.com. And back then, developers, programmers, and kind of the end of the .com boom were just impossible. It was impossible to find those types of folks. And if you look at like what extreme recruiting, separate job websites, all the little things that go into like recruiting all in. And then I would look at like, again, our clients in the trades and home services and related industries. And the only positive that I saw was most people aren't barely even scratching the surface in terms of, like they'd put their jobs on Indeed, right, and maybe one other site, and sort of that was it. Or some people hadn't even pivoted off of like Craigslist, type of thing. Right. So, and I think you've sort of woven in your culture and the uniqueness of the culture throughout this call. And I think that, again, while you're looking for people, you're not looking for everyone. And I would imagine that the type of person that comes to work for you guys, is going to see something in you that they're not going to see at the local fast food, restaurant, even though there might be a small signing bonus or some, some perk.
That's what we want. We want to feel like there's, there is a path off the back of this truck.
Yeah.
Right. It's not for everyone.
Yeah.
Right. But if you're here and you want to work hard, you want to learn, you want to take the next step, there's opportunities in sales. There's opportunities as estimators. There's opportunities as assistant operations managers, owners in a new location. I literally have a young man, and I still call him young. He's younger than me, in Austin, Texas, that I literally hired him off of a Craigslist ad, one of the hardest workers from Texas originally, and watched him grow up in this company and do any job that was asked of him, and ended up as an operations manager in Dallas, and now is the general manager and a part owner in our Austin branch in Austin, Texas. And a story that just shows, and I use that story a lot when we're recruiting, right? Because I want these guys to understand that, yes, while I'm hiring you for a specific job, the goal is not to keep you there. The job is to keep bringing a crop in. And I love to hire from within. We love to do that when we can. And that's what we do. We just try to present that. And you touched on it, but just to stay calm, right? Stay calm in what's going on. A lot of times these knee-jerk reactions, and if I have a good personal and tactical characteristic that of course is born from my original career, it is that as chaos gets louder, my whole personality, everything I do, all my training, my speech gets quieter, my mind slows down, and that's just from repetition and time. When the gunshots start going off, I don't rise to that chaos, but I slow myself and try to think. And I bring that to business from the standpoint that there's a lot of bad decisions made in a moment of chaos. There's a lot of bad decisions made in the face of somebody that did something really wrong in a position or dropped the ball on something, and you lose a good person, right? That you could have salvaged if you hadn't rose to that level of chaos. But if you would have quieted yourself, thought through it, and put your processes in place to make yourself think and act correctly, that can be salvaged a lot of times. And so that's definitely something that I love that you said that, just that, hey, stay calm.
Well, and what's funny, Jonathan, is I don't have it. I mean, I'm like, again, wired for action, and, I wouldn't say I'm a spaz, but, I'm a high energy, person. Right. And I'm impatient, so reacting quickly. And so I hear what you're saying. I think, of course, of when I was in Boston for a wedding, and we were in I don't know if I'd say it was a rougher area, but it was a lot of drunk guys. And we have a buddy who, he's been this way our whole lives, is when the bar fight erupts, it's like you almost would just want to get behind him and everything will be good. And the only thing I'll credit myself with is recognizing that I'm that way and surrounding myself personally and professionally with people like Mike, who are, just have that ability to slow things down, because I know I am sitting there just telling that inner voice, shut up, relax, take a deep breath. Don't lose it, with the team, because that, like you said, I mean, when you're building people up, it's like putting deposits in a bank account of goodwill, and you can lose all that with one, eruption of, you lose your temper, or, fire off at the wrong moment. What do you have? Do you have anything sort of big project, big initiative things that you're working on now, obviously, that, that you can share or talk about, or what's your focus kind of this part of 2022?
Yeah, so very excited about this. So we're, and it's just a continuation of the business, really. But as we have slowed down, I don't know if that's the right term, really, because it seems like we do it every year, but in opening locations, as we wanted to get some key players in the right places, right? We have absolutely one of the best I've ever seen, our VP of sales. And that was a key person in there, right? As you well know, from Blue Corona, once you buy an ad, you bought the ad, right? Whatever you do with it, once we get that lead in our door, if we drop the ball, we still bought the lead. And so we just have a player in there now that's incredible. And so I think the project was really putting the chess pieces in the right place. And I feel like we have currently assembled what is the best team we have ever had in place, from the top to the bottom, at Black Tie. And so with that, now it's back to the nail it, then scale it. We are ready to really push the gas on some new locations that I won't speak specifically about, but locations that we really have had our eye on for a long time. And I'm not talking about one or two, I'm talking about 10, right? And that we're ready in the next 18 to 24 months to just go in and take over some markets that I feel like we're going to be very strong in, that are our customer base, and that a year and a half, 2 years ago, I like to think we could have done it. But to be honest, I did not have the people and the infrastructure in place to be able to pull that kind of move off. But that's really what it is now, us just watching that, and also becoming more of a player in the storage side of the world. A lot of companies grow those simultaneously. We did not. We wanted to really learn the moving game, find the right people in the right places, make sure we had everyone where we needed them, and perfect our craft. And now we want to start transitioning and moving into that storage space as well. So that's probably the two biggest things on the horizon for us.
Well, it sounds like, I mean, when you have a great team in place, I'll just say from a, sort of add to your recruiting, to add to your recruiting horsepower, nothing is better than working, for a team that's like really well gelled, organized, well led. So, I mean, I think most employees, like intuitively understand that, but I would just say, like, when they're interviewing, going to work for a company that's got a plan, got the right team in place, sort of ready to scale, that's a great place to launch your career. And again, whether you're going in the back of the truck and looking to sort of, climb your way up, or
Right.
whether you're coming into a leadership position.
Yeah, we've really seen our turnover rate. Moving industry is very high for that on the trucks. Of course, it's hard work.
Yeah.
But even on the trucks, that has went down. And in the office, it's become almost non-existent.
That's
Our
awesome.
turnover rate. And so that's probably, if I go, what's our biggest win over the last 24 months? It's been that culture and really retaining great employees and people that are driving this growth that we're having. Because at our age, you would also expect for growth to start tailing off, not leveling off yet, but at least slowing down. And I can tell you, we've had some of the greatest years that Black Tie has ever seen in the last 3 to 4 years. And so we're just looking forward to the blessings.
Were you I feel like I'm taking a step back, but just as sort of a, almost like kind of to close things with the culture, since you were being brought in, how did you approach sort of I guess understanding and assimilating yourself to the culture that was there when you came in? And then were you sort of deliberate with the culture from the beginning, or are you sort of the mindset that, sort of like someone who's got principles and good character, the world around them sort of becomes a reflection without being deliberate about it. So it's almost like kind of like, it'll just happen.
Right.
How did you handle that as someone coming in from the outside?
So I think twofold. So I certainly brought some element, and I hate to use it like this, but there was some element of a little bit of fear factor when I got hired, right? And Dustin, by design, he wanted it that way, right? He was very clear to let these guys know that this is what he did before. This is what he still does as a reservist now for Dallas. And, he does not play games, right? Doesn't play games with attitude, doesn't play games with, some of the things that plague the moving industry. We're very blessed, but, theft on a job, drugs or alcohol in a workplace, et cetera, et cetera. And so I had to transition because my personality is not demonstrative. That's not how I roll, really. Pretty laid back until I have to not be. But we use that persona, I think, to some extent in the beginning, to set more of a culture at that point of going, if you mess up, JC has a radio in his pocket, and he'll just call somebody up here, and it's going past the company level, right? This is going straight to real work. And so that was in the beginning, and it was easy for me to come in and transition because there wasn't a large team. I think had I came into Black Tie today into this role, hired from the outside, it would have been a completely different ballgame. But when I came in, we literally had 2 office people.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. You were early
Yeah,
in. I keep
yeah,
thinking
the
about,
movers and Dustin. And
yeah.
that was so Dustin really steered that ship in the beginning. And Dustin is a strong leader and a great motivator, incredible sales guy. And so he was so good at selling the dream
Mm.
and really just firing the guys up. And I think fast forward over time, it has been deliberate. When I was asked to step into this position as CEO, the weight, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but the weight that I felt that night when I went home was like weight I had never felt before. I had always treated my position from an owner's mindset and had been a fractional owner already in black tie. But as I took this role and those things all increased, and I saw that if something, because in the back of our mind as a second, right, I was COO, even in that position, if something really came crashing down, at the end of the day, that position can always point to the leader, right? I was his right hand, but I was not the end of the conversation. He was. And so that I didn't really ever think about it like that because Dustin and I were so close and worked together and managed together. But the day that I took this role, I was a little bit shocked, honestly. Just if I'm being 100% clear, I've never really talked through this with anyone. But I'll be honest that day when I got home, the weight that I felt was just different.
Mm.
The responsibility I felt, the responsibility, things that I had not considered a lot before, but not just the men on the trucks, but now in my mind, I was picturing the families of the men on my trucks, right? And so if I don't keep this business operating at a level that it's been used to operating and men get laid off or they lose their job or I have to cut the sales team, all those things started creeping into my mind and I'm going, that's me. I've got to take the L on that if that happens. And so it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen on my watch, right? And so the buffer went away and it really matured me very quickly. And I'm an old guy anyway, but it matured me from a business standpoint very fast to go every decision that I make, every decision I make with my team has an effect that goes well beyond my office. And it was a huge growth moment for me. And I got to your question, I got very deliberate about culture very quick. And not that we didn't have some before. Every place has culture of some kind, whether it's natural or deliberate, but it got deliberate and it is more deliberate today that we speak very clearly about what our goals and our values are, about how we want our customers treated, about how my number one customer, who is my employee, is treated, and how we value them and how we let them know that they're valued. Because every company can't say this, but quite literally, we do build this company on the backs of the men on these trucks. And so I want to do everything I can that they see and understand that I haven't forgotten that, that somehow I haven't gotten detached from that part of this business and that I understand that without them, we don't have this business. And there's a thin line because you don't want that mindset to get to the point where it empowers them to act out or to not follow direction or to have the quality you want to have. If they just get the full, you can't do this without me, but I mean in a healthy way. They can't do this without the executive team. We can't do it without them. And if we have that kind of relationship and synergy, I think that we're unstoppable in the ability and what we can bring to the table and to the industry.
It's fantastic. And it goes back to just like, again, it's just kind of a simple idea, but it's, I'm sure, executing it every day consistently without fail. You know, that's the challenge, and that's what makes you guys different. And then just showing up every day to do that is, you know, that's the game.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, thanks so much, JC. This was awesome. Thank you for joining me. And again,
Man, I'm honored, man. Thank you for asking. I thought maybe you had the wrong phone number when you called me.
No,
But
no. When we were launching this, I did, what I would hope anyone would do, which is I turned to to Mike, who's our president, and then the account directors. And I just said, you guys are interfacing with the clients every day. Who are some great people that we should have on? And David Hamrick immediately said, has a fantastic story. You got to talk to JC from Black Tie, and just as a company and JC individually. And I said, well, what is the story? And he goes, I don't even want to get you, just talk to him, because that way you can hear it directly. And so, yeah, I looked you up, of course, beforehand. And so I got a sense for the law enforcement background. And again, thanks for your service for all the years that you were doing that. It's sort of the same as when you think about, I think about folks in the military, folks in law enforcement, and then fire and rescue. And
right.
Again, there's an appreciation for me personally, because in a million years, I'm not that tough. I'm not that brave. I'm not that calm in the face of chaos. And so it's like, I just thank God that there are people that are, and then it's like, dude, whatever I can do to, to support the group.
And that's the position I'm taking now, is just that, I want, as an individual and as a company, because I do know what those guys go through. I want to make sure that we continue to support them everywhere we can, and be a part to them, and help in any way. So
yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much.
And thank you, man. Anything we can ever do, we appreciate it. We appreciate Blue Corona so much, and huge part of our success and our continued growth, and makes me feel very comfortable that I can pick up the phone and call David, and when we get ready to add locations, and I just know that you guys are going to make the phone ring. And so that's massive. I don't have to start chasing down magazine articles and newspapers and billboards. I know I can call, and your team knows where to put the dollars in the right place, and somehow, like you said, that furniture magically gets from the truck into my new house. For me, and you can ask David, and it won't be a shot at me, but I told him, I was like, man, I need you to start me in elementary school level and teach me what you guys do, because that was something Dustin was super intuitive about, and I was not involved at all. And they have done a great job kind of bringing me up to speed. But the magic that I see is how, we open a location, you guys do what you do in the magical world of Blue Corona, and then suddenly my phone downstairs starts ringing. And man, that's incredible, and makes our business rock and roll.
Yeah, absolutely.